Coming up on Hoosier Sports Night, Indiana Volleyball played in front of a record crowd at Wilkinson Hall against Nebraska. We give you the recap to the game.
And women's soccer looked to bounce back from their first loss of the season. We'll show you how they fared. This is Hoosier Sports Night.
Hello and welcome to Hoosier Sports Night. I'm Kennedy Rehklau.
And I'm Gabe Fenster. Kennedy, Indiana finally has a week off from football, so what are you possibly going to do with your break?
You know, it's going to be hard to not get to watch the Hoosiers this weekend, but I have my backup team, so I'll be watching the Ohio State Buckeyes. How about you?
I'm probably going to be watching probably just postseason baseball.
That's fair. Well, speaking of football, after Indiana football's frustrating loss against the Maryland Terrapins on Saturday, big changes are in motion for the program. Our Gwen Parks has the latest.
After Indiana football suffered a tough 44-17 loss in their first Big Ten matchup of the season against the Maryland Terrapins, the program is shaking things up, saying goodbye to offensive coordinator Walt Bell and promoting Rod Carey, who's been with the Hoosiers since 2020, and also temporarily handled the offensive line coaching duties last season. Indiana's offense really had a rough go in this game. They just couldn't find the rhythm, and that questionable play calling didn't help their cause. Sustaining drives was a major issue, especially when they got to the red zone. Now flipping the script to Maryland's offense, it was a whole different story. QB Talua Tungavailoa and wide receiver Ty Felton absolutely lit up the field. These two connected for 3 touchdowns, and Maryland put up a whopping 472 total yards of offense. But Indiana, on the other hand, put up 321 yards. In the first, Maryland jumped to a 7-0 lead right out of the gate. The Hoosiers, on the other hand, just couldn't find their groove, and by halftime, Maryland was up by 27-3, making it look easy. In the second half, as Maryland kept piling on the points, Indiana did show some fight, scoring a couple of touchdowns when they made the call to switch to QB Brennan Swordsby. However, it stayed messy for the Hoosiers. IU failed even to convert a fake punt, giving Maryland an opening they capitalized on with a 44-yard field goal to extend their lead. After the upsetting performance, head coach Tom Allen admits he's looking at every option going forward. But when asked about the changes, his main concern was how well his team executed the play calling.
I think, for tonight, I just think that we need to execute the calls better, from what I saw. So there was a lot of receivers open, a lot of opportunities to make proper reads and didn't do that. So to me, that's really what I saw today. I haven't watched the film yet, but there's no question everything's going to be evaluated without a doubt. But at the same time, tonight's game was execution to me.
Maryland improves to 5-0 on the season, their best start since 2001, while the Hoosiers sit at 2-3 on the season, far from making any history of their own. This weekend's loss was a real head-scratcher, but with the bye week coming up, Tom Allen and company have some serious work to do. For IUSTV Sports from College Park, Maryland, I'm Gwen Parks.
The Indiana men's soccer team brought home their 4th tie of the season against the Kentucky Wildcats. Our Josh Pose has more.
Another day, another frustrating draw for Indiana men's soccer as they tied rival Kentucky 1-1 in Lexington on Tuesday night. After controlling the play in the early going, Indiana opened the scoring in the 12th minute with a left-footed strike by Carson Hunderlong at the top of the box to put the Hoosiers ahead 1-0 in the early going. After a hard foul in the box, senior goalkeeper JT Harms made a beautiful save on the ensuing penalty kick, diving to his right to keep the Wildcats off the board.
Be a confidence booster. He was already playing well this year, but for him to be in that situation and make a play to make sure we're still in that game ones is great. And I thought he held really well. There was obviously a stutter with the shooter, and I thought he held it and kind of handcuffed the kicker, and that's why he was able to make a pretty good save.
Kentucky finally got on the board in the 30th minute thanks to a beautiful half-volley goal to tie the game at 1. In the second half, the Hoosiers had numerous opportunities to break the deadlock, including Sam Sarver's attempt at an open goal.
This game is just, it can drive you crazy at times, knowing that that's the difference. And we just haven't been, I thought we put ourselves in position to make those plays, and the serves were good.
Indiana will be back in Big Ten play on Saturday afternoon as they head to State College to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions. For IUSTV Sports, I'm Josh Bose.
Indiana Volleyball continued Big Ten play with back-to-back games in Wilkinson Hall. Our Zeke Shapiro has the recap of the Iowa and Nebraska matches.
It was an exciting weekend of volleyball here at Wilkinson Hall in Bloomington. Against the University of Iowa, Indiana controlled the match from start to finish and closed it out in 3 sets. That all led up to the most highly anticipated matchup in Indiana women's volleyball history. A sold-out crowd at Wilkinson Hall against the number 2 ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers.
I thought that was a party tonight. I thought it was a great environment. The students were amazing. I thought the energy in the building was great. You know, typically when a Penn State or a Wisconsin or Nebraska comes here, it's mostly their fans. I didn't feel that tonight.
To the surprise of everyone in the building and possibly the country, Indiana played a thriller of a match, taking the first set by a score of 25-23 before several controversial calls in the second set had the Hoosiers even with Nebraska at 1 set apiece.
In my opinion, it was more us. Like, it wasn't us focused on, oh, we're playing Nebraska, we're playing like number 2. It's more like, okay, let's play our game. We're scouting them. We know kind of what they're going to do, but it's not about the name on the jersey. It's about our side. Then
in the third and fourth, Nebraska showed why they were the number 2 ranked team in the country, controlling the match and closing it out by a score of 3-1. Indiana will be back at home for their next match at Wilkinson Hall on October 11th when they take on bitter in-state rivals Purdue. For IUSTV Sports, I'm Zeke Shapiro.
Indiana cross country traveled to Chicago this past weekend for the Sean Earl Lakefront Invitational. Junior transfer Martin Segurola stole the show in his first race with the Cream and Crimson. Segurola took home the 8K gold division victory with a time of 24:41.3. Graduate student Austin Hackett led the men's team with a top 25 finish in the Tom Cooney 8K championship race. Senior Phoebe Bates finished the 6K with a personal best of 20:42.5, landing 42nd in the race. Both Hoosier squads finished in 11th place overall, combining for 12 personal best times. Indiana will travel to Texas A&M for the Ardoro Barrios Invitational next Friday, October 13th.
Coming up after the break, we crown this week's Hoosier Highlight Athlete of the Week.
And field hockey returned home to face off against Ohio State. This is Hoosier Sports Night.
This week on Hoosier News Source, we bring you the top stories from Bloomington and around the state.
A Rogers Elementary School student died from an illness last week. With bacterial meningitis ruled out, an investigation is underway. We'll bring you to the latest.
Plus, a string of burglaries have been reported at Eigenman Hall. We'll tell you what police say to do to prevent future thefts.
And a fireball lights up the sky in Bloomington, and it's all caught on camera.
You can find all that and more at IUSTV News on Instagram or on IUSTV's YouTube. Tune in each week for more Hoosier News coverage.
Welcome back to Hoosier Sports Night.
Joining us in studio for this week's Hoosier Highlight is IUSTV sports reporter Genevieve Malone. Genevieve?
Thanks, Gabe. Indiana volleyball had a busy weekend, sweeping Iowa and just falling to number 2 Nebraska. Although she is only a freshman, our Hoosier Highlight Athlete of the Week is Ramsey Gary, who stepped up to play these well-versed teams. She has been a huge asset to the squad, totaling in 34 digs between the 2 games, securing a team best of 13 against Iowa. Against Nebraska, Ramsey came out even stronger defensively, her 21 digs keeping the Hoosiers in the game. From her freshman season thus far, Gary has totaled 241 digs in only 17 games. The Hoosiers are already over halfway through their season, and with Ramsey Gary at the helm, they will travel to Penn State this Friday to face the 14th ranked squad. That's all for this week's Hoosier Highlight. Back to you guys at the desk.
The field hockey team faced number 11 Ohio State at home on Sunday. Victoria Remrev has more on the matchup.
On Sunday, Indiana competed against number 11 ranked Ohio State. It was a scoreless first half. Both teams were strong defensively, but Ohio State dominated on offense, having 3 penalty corners.
The Indiana defense held off Ohio State offensive pressure through the first half and majority of the third quarter to keep the game 0-0. The Hoosiers created a good number of offensive opportunities, tallying 4 penalty corners and 5 shots in the third period, but could not execute. Ohio State ruled the offensive stats, holding 16 shots with an outstanding 87% of them on goal. They also beat Indiana in penalty corners 7-4. Since the game was so defensive for the Hoosiers, they had over double the amount of saves compared to the Buckeyes. Indiana recorded at least one save in each quarter and recorded 8 shots for the game.
The final score was 3-0 Ohio State. Indiana showed true grit and perseverance throughout the game despite the loss. Indiana will be looking for a comeback as they travel to Louisville to face Bellarmine. I'm Victoria Remrev, IUSTV Sports.
The Indiana women's soccer team has been on a tear all season. This past week, they struggled to execute in a loss to Ohio State and a tie against Minnesota. Beat reporter William Stewart has the recap.
After 11 matches on the season, the Hoosiers were finally handed their first loss of the season up in Columbus at the hands of the Buckeyes, 2-1. Except this past Sunday, the Hoosiers had the chance to get out of the loss column as they hosted the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The first half was rather lackluster for both squads, as there was not a single shot on goal and only 4 taken in totality. The first shot on goal was taken by Minnesota in the 50th minute, and 13 more shots came in the second half from both sides, but neither team could get one to go. Therefore, a 0-0 draw ensued. Jamie Gerstenberg picked up 3 saves for IU, marking her 25th career shutout, and Megan Plashko only had to make 1 save the whole match for Minnesota. And an issue to the lack of offense was the fouls. There were 8 total in the first half, and 14 more came in the second. And Indiana assistant coach Tim Verschuren had something to say about Indiana's mentality after the tough week.
And the girls showed today that, you know, they picked that up and they made the most of it because, you know, they literally threw everything at us from the first minute. So not even towards the end of the game, but from the first minute they threw everything at us. And obviously the keeper did a great job, Jamie, as well as our back line, who obviously have played a lot of minutes so far. And, you know, to be able to do that and, you know, second game in a week with limited rest time in between games, you know, credit to them, credit to the effort. And we're really proud of how the team rallied from the first half of Ohio State, and then after Ohio State still not getting, you know, a tie or a win going into this game. So yeah, nothing really changed in our mentality going into this game.
The Hoosiers now stand at 9-1-3 overall and 3-1-1 in conference play. The Hoosiers' mindset clearly won't change no matter the outcome of their matches, as their focus now changes to Sunday before they head up to West Lafayette to face off against a Purdue team that's 0-4-1 in conference play this season. And in Coach Verschuren's words, he's looking forward to getting a win and getting that golden boot back to IU for the first time in a long time. For IUSTV Sports, I'm William Stewart.
The Hoosiers will head into Boilermaker territory this Sunday at 1 p.m. in an attempt to get back to their winning ways and their first win over Purdue since 2014.
The Indiana men's golf team finished top 3 for the second straight weekend at the Fighting Irish Classic in South Bend. Senior Drew Salyers once again led the charge for Indiana, shooting 3 under par and finishing tied for 5th. Junior Robert Bender III finished tied for 9th in the event, shooting 1 under par. For the second week in a row, freshman Cole Starnes finished in the top 15, shooting even par. Noah Gillard converted 8 total birdies throughout the event on his way to 4 over par. Graduate Thomas Hersey finished 8 over par in the event, finishing tied for 48th. The Hoosiers will get a break this weekend before heading to Vero Beach, Florida next Sunday.
The Indiana women's tennis team served up some great matches at this weekend's annual Hoosier Classic. On day 1 of the round robin, freshman singles players Sarah Lee Allier and Chase Boyer won their debut matches. Both players then teamed up to separately win a doubles match each later that day. For day 2, women's tennis got 2 wins in singles and 2 wins in doubles. And finishing off the weekend on day 3, IU brought in one last singles win. The Hoosiers will compete on Sunday in the ITA All-American Championships. Victors will travel to Knoxville, Tennessee on October 18th for the ITA Regional Championships.
Joining us this week to preview the weekend in Hoosier sports is Madelynn Denny. Madelynn?
Thanks, Kennedy. It's a light weekend for the Hoosiers in Bloomington. On Friday, the men's tennis team heads to South Bend for the weekend to kick off the Bobby Bayless Invitational. The women's volleyball team will travel to University Park, Pennsylvania to take on Big Ten opponent number 14, Penn State at 7 p.m. Saturday brings more Big Ten play as the men's soccer team hits the road to take on Penn State at noon. The women's volleyball team bounces back and travels to College Park, Maryland to face the Terrapins at 7 p.m. On Sunday, the women's soccer team takes the trip to West Lafayette to take on the Boilermakers at 1 o'clock. To conclude the Hoosiers weekend, the field hockey team heads to Louisville, Kentucky for a non-conference matchup against Bellarmine at 3 p.m. That's all for the weekend in Indiana athletics. Back to you guys.
And that's our show for the week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
And be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports to keep up with all the latest in IU athletics. For the production crew behind us, I'm Gabe Fenster.
And I'm Kennedy Rehklau. We'll see you next week.